So I noticed a weird thing about MSNBC. They're not very liberal, and they're one of their favorite hosts is Chris Mathews, Chris Hardball, as I like to call him. And, you know, whichever way the wind is blowing with popularity is the way Chris Hardball is going to report it. So when it was cool to like Chris Christie, look how he reported. Now, here's a guy from New Jersey who, after Hurricane Sandy, quit his job and volunteered for a month to help people get their lives back together and help rebuild people's houses after the Sandy hurricane. This guy spent a month doing that, so much so that the town gave him one of their vans. That's what a big help he was. And he's been working and working, and Chris Christie has not dispersed the funds that the feds gave to help those people. He's not dispersing the funds. Right.
New Jersey is still suffering from the corruption of Chris Christie not distributing those relief funds.
And so this guy Chris Christie has a press conference where he's going to brag about how good everything's going in New Jersey and what a good job he's been doing. And this guy had something to say. He stood up and protested, saying, hey, why don't you disperse the funds to help these people? You're not getting the funds to the people fast enough. And this is what Chris Christie said to the guy.
I'll be more than happy to have a debate with you anytime you like, Guy, because somebody like you who doesn't know a damn thing about what you're talking about except to stand up and show off when the cameras are here. I've been here when the cameras aren't here, buddy, and done the work. I've been here when the cameras weren't here and did the work. So I'm glad you had your day to show off, but we're the ones who are here to actually do the work. So turn around, get your 15 minutes of fame, and then maybe take your jacket off, roll up your sleeves, and do something for the people of this state.
So that's Chris Christie acting like a bully and distorting the issue because he's the one there for the photo op, and he's yelling at a guy who actually volunteers his time, so much so that he quit his job for a month to help people.
Everything Chris Christie is saying about that guy is the complete opposite of the truth. It's a pure case of projection. Hey, you get your 15 minutes and do your press op. Well, that's what this fucker is doing.
So guess what? Chris Mathews, when this happened, he was giddy about it. He couldn't stop giggling. In fact, here's how he introduced the clip on his show.
This is my favorite quote of the week. Christie unloaded on some guy, some protester who dared to hold up a sign at a press conference. This is Sinatra country in the old days. Let's watch.
He calls him Sinatra. He calls him Sinatra when he's bullying and berating publicly a guy who's working for the people. He's like Sinatra. It's my favorite clip of the week. He's Sinatra. Watch, he's going to yell at some guy who's volunteering. So that's how Chris Mathews handled it when Chris Christie is yelling at some volunteer. That's how Chris Mathews handled it. Didn't even, by the way,
what normal human being sees that clip and responds like that?
Exactly. What normal human being sees the governor, the most powerful guy in the state, yelling at a protester who's protesting for him to help victims?
Yeah.
Okay, so Chris Christie. Then that was a year and a half ago, or maybe 2 years ago that happened. Now cut to just like a week or two ago, Chris Christie was being asked a question about Donald Trump, and he responds thusly.
Donald Trump said you need to be careful what you say. What's your response to him?
I really don't have a response. You know, we're sitting here talking about some really important issues of recovery and addiction that are ravaging families across the country. And you all, quite frankly, should be ashamed of yourselves. All you do is ask about Donald Trump. I go every place I go. And then I have the press complain to me, why do you think Donald Trump's doing so well? Well, hell, man, if you're talking about him 24 hours a day, anybody can do well. Whatever Donald Trump has said for the day today is, quite frankly, nothing that I have any interest in responding to. I'm running for president.
Wow.
Ooh.
So he's coming after the press. So Chris Christie accurately, by the way, calls out the press for their nonstop 24/7 coverage of Donald Trump. No one's worse at that than MSNBC and Chris Mathews.
That's going to hit a nerve.
In fact, Chris Mathews has bragged about how they cover him live. We got it live. We got it first because we're covering him live, which is the total upside down and backwardsness of that's him being a politician, trying to spin you that his journalism has integrity, which it has none, okay? Because they cover Trump 24/7, and they're the ones helping to boost him up, which is exactly what Chris Christie just said. And now let's see how Chris Mathews responds when Chris Christie is bullying the press.
Isn't it nice to be talked down to morally by Chris Christie? I mean, does he think that's going to win him support? Talk down to us morally? I'd stay off that channel if I were him.
Wow. Oh, now all of a sudden, who's Chris Christie to talk down? Because he's talking to you. Because he's talking about you, Chris Mathews. All of a sudden, you see clearly that Chris Christie is full of it. All of a sudden, when he's coming at you, you see the BS in him. But when he's coming at a volunteer or a teacher or anybody other decent human being in the world, a citizen, you think it's funny. Look at him bullying him. He's like Frank Sinatra. This guy's going to beat the crap out of you, I'll tell you. It's not funny, but it just reveals Chris Mathews. He goes on. He can't stop criticizing Chris Christie because this really hit a nerve with Chris Mathews.
And by the way, wasn't this the tactic of bullying that he used to get those Democratic mayors behind him when he ran for re-election? And isn't that the bridge problem right there?
Yeah, all of a sudden, now he's a bully. Did you see? Isn't this the bullying problem that Chris Christie has had? Isn't this what happened with the... So all of a sudden, when he points his finger at you, Chris Mathews then gets upset. Then it's like, okay. Then it starts to get...
Chris Mathews is not only a fair weather friend, he's a fair weather enemy.
He is a fair weather enemy. Very well put. Isn't that amazing? When Chris Christie's bullying a volunteer citizen, he's Frank Sinatra. But now that he's coming after Chris Mathews and the rest of the press, he's turned into Peter Lawford overnight. Nobody can forget Christie's Capitol hit album, Songs for Failing Livers. Anyway.
Oh, that was a favorite.
That was a favorite. So here now he starts to. It's crazy to see him start to act like this, right? But he's done this before, Chris Mathews. We've seen him be erratic like this with Iraq, George Bush, Libya, Syria, and his hair dye. We've seen him be like this. Hank almost laughed out loud at that. So let's go. He goes out. He starts to get a little weird. Let's watch.
And by the way, wasn't this the tactic? So what's he doing with this? I don't want to talk about him. He's below me. You press people should be ashamed of covering him because he's the only guy saying anything.
Did you hear it? He just defended himself. Oh, he's mad at us because we're covering Donald Trump. He's the only guy saying anything. Oh, really? You mean Bernie Sanders isn't saying anything, Chris? Is that why you don't cover Bernie Sanders 24/7 and run his speeches live like you do Donald Trump's because Bernie Sanders isn't saying anything? Is that really why you don't cover Bernie Sanders? And is that really why you cover Donald Trump because he's saying something? Yeah, what he's saying is a bunch of racist, bigoted, anti-American hogwash, which you guys give a platform to. Yes, you don't...
Well, Jimmy, you're missing the point. If only Bernie Sanders would say more racist stuff, maybe Chris Mathews would cover him.
Yeah, yes. Maybe if Bernie Sanders start picking on American Indians or started saying something about some Italians or Irish people, maybe if he called them drunks, maybe Chris Mathews would then cover them like he's been covering.
Somebody. Bernie's just got to pick up the game. Pick on somebody.
Watch him start reaching now. Now it's when it gets weird. Let's watch this, Hank.
What was he slumping down in his chair there for? Wasn't that an odd sort of picture of him there, slumping down behind the microphone? Wasn't that weird for him? He should sort of try to dramatize himself more.
Now he's just trying to look for stuff to insult Chris Christie. Why is he slumping it? Why is he slumping in his chair? Did you hear what he said? He said he should try to dramatize himself more. This is your criticism of Chris Christie, that he doesn't dramatize himself enough? So you don't think Chris Mathews is out of his mind yet? Listen to this. Talk about
Chris Mathews.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Chris Mathews was just comparing this guy to Sinatra. Now he's what? He's talking about him as if he's a schlump.
Yes. Ready? Here we go.
I mean, he was just relaxed. You see him in the town halls. I mean, in terms of being a candid talent, Christie has it. But you're right. He's
What's
not
with the white shirts?
That's their uniform.
Why does he always wear white shirts?
What he wears?
Are you kidding me? This is his criticism of it. Why is he wearing white shirts? And you see the people on the panel like, are you out of your mind, Chris? This is what you're criticizing? What? He goes on.
Prosecutor. That's the.
And he always walks around with his coat off, showing just whiteness.
It would be better though. Lamar Alexander.
I mean, what is the shock
Rodney
for?
Plaid, what do you want?
I don't think that's his biggest problem. His biggest problem is
snowblind.
His biggest problem.
They're trying to talk.
Well, that was kind of funny. Well, but I think we can all agree the worst thing about Chris Christie is his white shirt. Maybe you haven't seen him in baseball pants.
When people complain about Chris Christie, it's always about his shirt choice. What the F? Boy, when you rightfully call out Chris Mathews for poor journalism, he will come at you in the most underhanded way that reveals himself to be a psychopath. Who says that stuff? Who gets upset like that at Chris? What? By the way, Chris...
Well, Chris Mathews should be wearing a white jacket that, ties in the back.
Yes, he said. Do you want to hear? I want to hear that again, by the way.
I mean, it was just relaxed. You see him in the town halls. I mean, in terms of being a candid talent, Chris...
Here it comes out of nowhere.
He has it, but you're right.
What's with the white shirts?
What's with the white shirt?
Why does he always wear white shirts?
What he wears?
Prosecutor. That's the.
And he always walks around with his coat off, showing just whiteness.
It would be better though. Lamar Alexander.
I mean, what is the shock
Rodney
for?
Plaid, what do you want?
I don't think that's his biggest problem. His biggest problem is
snowblind.
His biggest problem.
Chris Mathews, crazier than Michelle Bachmann.
Mm-hmm. Mathews had to wrap up this segment because he had to quickly get to the latest Donald Trump story.
Yes, that's right. Trump was going to go sneeze, and they had to cover it. All right.
Well, there's a little something to talk about with Chris Christie, and in that press conference, Chris Christie in the debates, he'll attack Rand Paul, he'll attack Marco Rubio, Ben Carson, Ted Cruz, but he'll never attack Donald Trump. Because Chris Christie is a bully, that means he's really a coward. And like all bullies, he is most terrified of being bullied. So he only beats up those that can't fight back, like teachers and government workers. He knows that Chris Christie knows that Donald Trump will hit him back. So he doesn't get in front of him.
Yeah, and you know what else he doesn't get in front of? A salad.